Hello again. This is the video for the Read Aloud for assignment 9 for U.S. history about the women's suffrage movement. So, starting on, I think this is page 2 of the assignment, your instructions are to read the article below about the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote, and how the author argues that it really only helped white women. You're going to answer the questions on the right side in yellow based on this section of the reading. Okay. And then there's one final question at the end too. So just your answers should be based on what you read in the text. They should be in your own words. So please don't try to copy what's in the text, try to put it in your own words, and should be like 1 to 2 sentences. Okay. So this article is called The 19th Amendment Only Really Helped White Women. It's by Marilyn Le Jeunesset from Teen Vogue in 2019. The first question you're answering on the right is, what rights did the 19th Amendment give for whom? So let's read. In the history of fairness and equality in the United States, there's no denying that women of color have often come up short. From the 19th and 20th century feminist movements, which is just women's rights movements, to modern day fights for equality, Black, Asian, Native, and Latinx women have often rallied for the same rights as white women without the same results. Take the 19th Amendment, for example. Passed by Congress in June 1919 and ratified or approved over a year later on August 18, 1920, the 100-year-old bill was meant to guarantee all women the right to vote. The amendment stated that the right to vote shall not be denied or abridged, which means like lessened or taken away, by the United States or by any state because of sex. So, based on that, what rights did the 19th Amendment give and for whom? Next section. The question is, why does the author argue that the 19th Amendment did not benefit women of color? Okay, why did it not help women who were not white? While that sounds ideal in theory, as Harvard University's Susan Ware, a historian who specializes in women's suffrage, discussed, it was mainly white women who won the right to vote in 1919. The primary beneficiaries of, or people who benefited from, the 19th Amendment at first were white women and the small minority of African American women who lived in northern and western states, where there were no racial restrictions or race bans on voting, Ware told Teen Vogue. The vast majority of African Americans still lived in the South, where men and women were kept from voting by Jim Crow or racist laws put in place in the late 19th century. These laws also left out many Native American and Asian American women who were not granted citizenship or the right to vote. Some states took it upon themselves to pass laws making it harder for minorities to vote, with the creation of literacy tests, or tests that only Black people had to take to register to vote, and poll taxes, fees that only Black people had to pay to vote. Violence was also used to deter their legal right to vote. So based on that section, you can answer the question here, why the 19th Amendment did not benefit women of color. Okay, next section. Your question is, how did women of color contribute to the suffragette movement, or the movement to gain voting rights for women? So how did women of color help that movement? It wasn't until the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that Black women in the South were able to exercise voting rights without restrictions like literacy tests. Still, Black women's contributions to the protests and demonstrations were critical or very important to the 19th Amendment's passage. White women earned the right to vote, in part due to women of color, and these contributions have been largely erased from history. African American club women like Ida B. Wells, Sojourner Truth, and more were central to the struggle for the vote. African American suffragists, or women who fought for the right to vote, always saw the vote as part of a much bigger set of social, economic, and political issues surrounding their communities and their right to vote. Women of color used an intersectional approach to the voting problem by connecting issues of race, class, and gender, unlike white suffragists, who often approached the issue from the lens of gender only. So women of color talked about poverty, they talked about race, and they talked about how those things also, in addition to gender, affected their right to vote. Okay, you can use that to help you, and we'll keep reading to finish the rest of this section too.